Hello guys, welcome to lesson number 63 in our series, Drawing Techniques for Beginners. I think we're probably going to finish our portrait of Myla today. I've added a bit of a background, so if any of you watched the last project that we did, the Statue of Liberty project, to add the background, what I've been doing is I've been using some of my 6B pencil and I've just been really just layering. And this is really the only time that I do use anything is when I'm adding a soft background. I've just used a very soft piece of tissue paper just to then sort of smooth that out and blend it out. Now I don't want a completely flat background, so I don't mind a little bit of texture in there, but I thought adding the background would then just really pull the dog's face forward. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to be using some of my black coloured pencil. This is a Polychromos, Faber-Castell Polychromos. This is the Schwarz Black. It holds a really nice point. And what I wanted to do is I just wanted to go around the drawing and just really start to balance some of those darkest values out. We may use a little bit of our 2B, 4B, and I've got my 6B there. And then we've got our Mono Zero eraser, and I've also just freshened up my kneaded eraser. And then we'll sign this, and I think that we could then pretty much call this one complete. I really do like the way that it's starting to jump off of the page. So using our black coloured pencil, I'm just going to start really defining some of these very dark edges around the eye. Now at this stage that we've got so much graphite down on the paper, you are going to need to use a slightly different technique with the coloured pencil. I'm not just layering with the tapered stroke now. I'm pressing a little bit harder, and I'm just almost using I don't want to use the word scribbling, but I'm just using a slightly irregular pattern now. I'm not just pulling forward because I really do need to get some value in, certainly into some of these very dark areas where we've got layer upon layer of our graphite. Again, be very, very careful not to go overboard and go into too many of the dark areas. It's very easy to look at something and think, oh, that's dark, I'm just going to go straight in and press on very hard and make it all completely black. We don't want to draw the viewer's attention or eye away from certain aspects of our drawing, and we want these very subtle dark areas. But straight away now I can start to see that just the addition of some of this black is really accentuating certain areas. This is the first time that you visited the channel. Thank you so much for watching. This is actually lesson 63. I've done 63 step-by-step real-time videos. We've done various projects now. But I started out just really wanted to pass on some of my skills and some of my knowledge that I've picked up over the last 3 years. It's coming up for 4 years now, actually. It's nearly 2020. And try to have a bit of fun along the way and just draw with you guys. We've created a Facebook group called Tutorial Tuesdays Beginners to Pro. So if you go and find that and request to join, what we're doing there is I'm posting all of these videos up as well. And I'm seeing people from all over the world having a go and joining in with some of the projects. We've done quite a few now. I can't remember off the top of my head how many we've done. We've done a couple of animals, and we've done a baby portrait. We did the Statue of Liberty last, which was a lovely piece. But I'm really pleased with how this pet portrait has turned out. I've said in previous videos in this project that this is actually my brother's dog, and her name's Myla. He got her just over a year ago now, and she's a Weimaraner. And he asked me a long time ago, or he mentioned, he said he'd really like a portrait of Myla doing, so he could put it up on his wall. And it was something that I sort of had on the back burner. But over on the group, a lot of you were really interested in learning how to do pet portraits and how to draw fur and things. So I thought this would be a great project for us all. And killing two birds with one stone, I'm able to then give him this in a few weeks' time as a Christmas present. So I will get it framed, and I'll show you the kind of frame that I use that I feel just looks best for this type of pencil portrait, and I'll post some images of that over on the group. But if this is, like I say, the first time you've visited, thank you so much for that. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If you've got any ideas for future videos, there's maybe a project that you'd like to learn or have a go at, then don't hesitate to leave me a message, comment in the group. We're quite a grown-up group. There's not a lot of silly posts and political nonsense and whatnot that I see more and more now, actually, over on various different art groups, which is a shame. But I'm glad to say that this group is actually quite a lot of fun to be in sometimes. It's nice to switch off at the end of a day and go and read some of the comments and see some of the fantastic work that you've all been doing. So I'm just picking out some of these darkest areas. Whenever we want to draw realism, we've got to develop contrast, which is between the darkest and the lightest areas. So we're going to start taking out some lighter areas. We also want to create a contrast in textures. So the marble effect of these eyes, very, very smooth and almost mirror-like, compared to the hairy nose and then the hairy muzzle, and then followed by the textured nose, where we've got these various circular shapes within the dark regions. They come out as shadows, and then in the lighter regions we've got these highlighted areas. So it's something that you've got to really try and create during your time with your drawing. Getting the proportions right is very important as well. So I've shown you a few various methods of how to do that. We use the grid method for this one. If you go back to the first lesson in this series, in this project, so it's not lesson number 1. Lesson number 1 to 6 is called Essential Pencil Skills, and I talk about the tapered stroke and layering and how we use the kneaded eraser to create depth and values and highlighted areas and techniques to draw lighter coloured shadows and things like that. So go and check out Essential Pencil Skills. But the first one of each of the projects that we do, I just go through the method in which I would use to get the basic area plotted out, get the correct proportions, and ultimately I think we're going to get to the stage where we're going to be doing some freehanding. That's sort of the holy grail. I know there's a lot of people out there that are super interested in learning how to draw freehand. Now, learning to draw freehand is, I don't think it's the best method of learning to draw freehand. I don't think is going out and starting to draw freehand, if I'm being absolutely honest with you. I think that using grid method, using proportional dividers, having a go at learning how to train your eye to see things is the best method. So I really do like the grid method for those purposes. I've repeated before that using the grid method, for me sometimes, particularly if I'm doing a commission piece, it's very difficult to get rid of all of those grid lines that you may have created in your quest to get the proportions right. And what they tend to do is they just build up value, and sometimes they're a little bit unsightly, and it's quite difficult to completely remove them. I'm really highlighting, or low lighting, I guess you could say, because I'm emphasizing this dark shadow here, because this is actually a crease. So I'm looking throughout the drawing and I'm trying to just pick out those very, very darkest zones. So I'm using this coloured pencil sparingly. So I am using a bit of a tapered stroke there now. I was just layering slightly. Now the beauty with these polychromos, Faber-Castell polychromos, is they do hold the tip quite well. So for drawing whiskers and things like that, and we have got a few whiskers in there, they do hold their tip. I've used Prismacolor pencils before. I've got a whole selection of them in my art cupboard. And they're brilliant for doing facial textures, skin textures, getting, you know, a good coverage, but they really do tend to be slightly softer, and as a result they don't hold the point as well. So whenever I'm drawing animals or, you know, trying to get a fur texture, I do like to use the polychromos. So I'm taking the kneaded eraser now, and I'm just going to start pulling a little bit of the value out of this textured muzzle area around the front of the mouth here. This is, again, it's another texture. It's a slightly different texture to what we have on other areas of the dog. And we want to emphasize that. We really want to try and create the highlighted areas there. And because of the technique that we've used throughout the drawing, even though we've got an awful lot of graphite there, because we haven't used blending stumps, I've not used the tissue in those areas, I can still lift graphite away very subtly. And it's that subtle removal of graphite in various areas that gives me the opportunity to create very, very subtle changes in value. There's a little bit of light picking up on a certain area, and I can remove that. I can take out various strands of hair. And that's the reason that I love to draw the way that we do, or the way that we've been practicing for the last few months now. Adding the background has allowed me to add this slightly highlighted area to the right hand side of Mila's body here. As you can see there, we've got a slightly highlighted area there. And we've got some subtle textures within this dark area, but even within a dark area, you have lighter areas within that. The lightest areas have darker areas, the darker areas have lighter areas, and it's trying to capture those. Okay, so let's have a look at a couple of these whiskers then. So we've definitely got one coming out of the side here, and as you can see, it starts off quite bold, so there's good definition initially, and then it just fades a little bit. So I just want to give a hint. I don't want to go over the top. I think there's possibly another one within there. And then obviously we have a few now here coming out of the side of the muzzle. You don't need to be counting them necessarily, but just getting the general feeling and direction of them. We have a couple that are protruding out at the back there. I'm not loving the look of that actually. I'm going to take my HB pencil, which is slightly harder, and I'm just going to see if I can increase the contrast and the darkness of those without going too thick. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the kneaded eraser just to dab them back a little bit, just to take some of that harshness away. Because they were just, for me, just looking slightly unrealistic. And it's something that we play around with, but just adding a little bit of shadowed area under where the sort of the follicle of the hair is coming out. Okay, I'm happy with that. That looks better. Okay, so just coming in with the black pencil, the coloured pencil. We've got a dark shadowed area just underneath this part of our ear, which comes round and tucks round nicely. Just want to show that shadow there, tapering out a little bit. A little bit of darkness on this left side of the face, just in that crease there. I just want to define that a little bit better, just really strengthening up that dark zone. And actually the whole side of this face, potentially here, needs to be a little darker. It's just going to separate it from the background as well. And I think this is possibly my favourite part of any drawing. It's this final phase where we are really pressing the darks, getting those subtle details in, those little shadows. And it's actually an area of the drawing that I really used to neglect, and I'm seeing an awful lot of work, not just in our group, but on other Facebook groups, art groups and whatnot, where I see people, they've spent an awful lot of time with their drawing, and it almost looks like it's half finished because they haven't gone through this stage where they are being very, very picky with their darks and adding those subtle values and those subtle shadowed areas and details. But really not being afraid of going darker, which is something that I suffered with, and I think most pencil artists suffer with that. When we're faced with that blank piece of white paper, it's extremely easy to imagine that those initial layers of 2H or HB or even 2B are dark enough because they look so dark in contrast to the surrounding area, which is stark white. Which is why adding a background sometimes can really help you then understand how much of a value change we need in certain areas, and we need to bring values up in other places that we maybe didn't think we did. But I'm looking at that now, and it pains me to say it, but I think we're almost done, which means that I've really enjoyed working on this. Actually, I don't know if it's because it's a dog that I know well, and I know that it's going to be received very well. I think my brother will be very happy with it, or at least I hope he will. And yeah, it'll be I wouldn't say a sad moment, but it's coming to a conclusion. So I'm just going to take the Mono Zero eraser now, and I'm just going to take a few select fine hairs here and there out, just to add to the texture, add to the realism. And it's this culmination of these little tiny touches and details here and there that make the final version appear to be realistic, which is what we're going for. I've said before in many of my videos, I was drawn to drawing, years ago, 3-4 years ago now, and it was the realistic drawing, the realistic portraits, things like that, that really caught my eye. That's what I wanted to master. I thought that I was blown away by the ability that some people had to create something with a pencil and an eraser that resembled the photograph. And in many cases, I've seen lots of drawings that look better than a photograph. And that for me has been the goal and the aim really ever since. I'm just going to take the 2B pencil in here. I think that we're possibly a little bit light in this area. And it's amazing how what appeared to be very dark, with the addition of some of these darker values in and around the eyes, no longer appear to be dark. They take on a very lighter value to them. And it's important that we aren't just satisfied and rushing to get it complete. You know, we're not under any real deadline now. I mean, we're towards the start of December, and this hasn't got to be finished until the 25th. So I will definitely spend a little bit of time fine-tuning, having a look at it maybe tomorrow with fresh eyes before I use my fixative spray to complete. But I will sign this today. At the end of this lesson, we will sign this. I'm thinking somewhere in this bottom right corner as we're looking at it, is going to be the best place to scribble out autograph. Don't forget to send me some of your images. I've had a few of you sending me various images and pictures that you've been drawing over on Instagram. You can get hold of me on Instagram. That's at artisticn1k. It's the same as the YouTube channel. You can also find me on Facebook. You can get a hold of us on the group, and it's lovely to connect with people. Possibly just want a little bit more, just something in this quite barren area here. She's not fully formed, all of these whiskers here. I've not seen her for a few months actually, so it'll be interesting to see her over the Christmas period and see how much she's changed from this image, because this wasn't taken super recently. This is probably 6 or 7 months old now. But she is a very cute dog, I'm sure you'll agree. Let's take a few highlights out in our dog's nose. Some of that texture. I've still not quite decided whether the realism comes from the highlighted areas or the very, very deep dark zones. I'm guessing it's a combination of both. But when I look at these very realistic pictures, I don't know if it's the dark areas that catch my eye the most, so the areas around the eye or the crevices in the nose, or whether it's these subtle highlighted areas. I go through different phases. Sometimes I look at them and I go, yep, that's definitely the reflection on the skin, the pores, the little white areas around the eyes where it's slightly wet. And then other times I look at drawings and it's definitely the shadows. It's the deep shadows which are being cast, and they're very dark towards where the object's touching something or something's overlapping one another. So I'm guessing it's a combination of both, which is why that's what I'm going to spend the most amount of time on here now. I'm just going to keep bringing out some of those light areas, and then I'm going to go in with the darker pencils, maybe even like I've got here, the coloured pencil, the polychromos. And I'm going to just gently massage some of the values out and just try and ramp this up, ramp the contrast up, ramp the realism up. So, looking at the time on the video, we're around about 25 minutes. I do like to try and keep our videos to about half an hour, and I think you've kind of got the gist of where we're going with this. So I'm going to just add a little bit of contrast underneath the bottom of the nose there, and then taking my kneaded eraser, I've left a small area already. I'm just going to take a little bit of the value away there, and then I'm going to use my 2B pencil, which I have here, and we're going to give this a little scribble. Just give that a slight brush, take away some of the harshness, and I think that will just about do us. Thank you so much for joining me again with this project. It's been a pleasure. I'm really happy with how she's turned out. I can't wait to see some of your versions of our Myla portrait. Don't forget to leave me a comment down below. I do appreciate all of the likes, all of the comments, the shares and the subscribes that I get. And I can't wait to see some of your work. Thanks so much for watching, and I will be with you in the next video. See you soon. Hit subscribe, smack the notifications button, follow me on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter.